Hello, my name is Haley Wolf, and today I will be presenting you the history of ballet. Ballet's origin begins in the 16th century when the French King Henry II and Catherine de' Medici from the Italian courts joined in marriage. The French courts had lavish entertainment full of jousting and masquerades, where Italians had social dances called balli and ballettes, which later became known as ballet de corps, as the French called them. Ballet started as a combination of these forms of entertainment, and it was Catherine de' Medici that knew centralizing the French courts around ballet would show wealth and culture of state, and therefore be used as a political tool. She popularized ballet within the French court, which then carried on by generations to come. When King Louis XIV was crowned, his interest in dancing became a strong support of his French courts. He grew up trained in ballet and performed many roles in multiple ballets. In 1653, he performed the role of Apollo, god of the sun. He wore a fancy golden Roman cut corselet and hilt of golden rays and became known as the Sun King. He quite literally centralized ballet in his courts by building a ballroom and theater in the middle of his palace. The mastery of ballet was also a demand he had for his nobility, alongside the proficiency of writing, jousting, and speech. It was only those of high status that were allowed to perform in the ballets of the French courts. In 1661, the king established Académie Royale de Danse, or the Royal Academy of Dance, which was the world's very first ballet school. The king was the first to declare what made a dancer an amateur versus a professional. His dancing master, Pierre Beauchamp, codified the 5 positions of the feet that are the foundation of classical ballet technique. It was this school that designated names for each movement or step, which then made it easier to train the dancers as well as choreograph and teach new ballets. In 1671, the Paris Opera opened, which allowed public showcases of ballet performances. Before this expansion, ballets were only performed by men, and female roles were performed by young boys, but in 1681, professional female dancers made their debut. Although female dancers were allowed to start performing, during this time they were still in the shadows of the men because of the fact that they started dancing later, and also because they had to wear huge and heavy costumes, which limited their mobility. The world's second oldest ballet academy was the St. Petersburg's School, which opened in 1738. During the end of the 18th century, ballet also began to expand to England, and it was here that we see ballet stepping away from the performances of the French courts. John Weaver, an English ballet master, created ballet d'action, which was ballet with no spoken words. Pantomime, which are upper body gestures, were what started to carry the storyline of the ballets. The French choreographer Jean-Georges Noverre changed the heavyweight costumes worn by the performers to a lighter weight material, which allowed the dancers more freedom in their movement. He also had the dancers stop wearing masks, which allowed them to show facial expressions. It was during the pre-Romantic period that ballerinas started to dance on the tips of their toes, or en pointe. The ballerina that is credited to be the first dancer to perform en pointe is Marie Taglioni, although it is believed that there were other ladies that danced en pointe a few years before her. In 1832, Taglioni's father choreographed a ballet for her to perform in, which was called La Sylphide, and is one of the first major ballets that is also still performed today. As seen in the picture, Taglioni wore a bell-shaped skirt that went above the ankles to show her pointe work, and it was also the skirt that inspired the Romantic. With the new skill of dancing on point improving, it was the ballerina that ruled the Romantic era, with very few men making a mark on ballet during this time. Romantic ballets were highly influenced by the art and literature of this time. The plots of these ballets were centered around spirit women, such as sylphs or ghosts, who captured the heart of mortal men, which made it difficult for them to live happily in the real world. This period was full of romantic tragedies. Famous ballets that were created during this time were Giselle, Paquita, Les Corsaires, and Coppelia. Also, some famous ballerinas were Marie Taglioni, Fanny Cerrito, Carlotta Grisi, and Lucille Gran. The classical era of ballet came about due to two major changes in the world of dance: the advanced evolution of the point shoe and the inspiration of the narrative music of the time. The new and improved point shoe allowed dancers to obtain a higher skill level in ballet as well as have quicker movements, making the choreography more exciting. The second major change of ballet was the collaboration between the choreographers and the composers. Choreographers created the libretto, which is the story or narrative idea, and they choreographed their dances to go along with it. They then shared their librettos with the musicians, who then composed the score to go along with the story as well. Classical ballets are composed of four components: the adage, the female variation, the male variation, and the grand allegro. There were 5 main ballet schools which were located in France, Russia, England, Denmark, and Italy. They had standard classical training systems among all of the schools. However, the different methods that were applied varied from school to school and also varied between the choreographers that they had. With that said, the overall performance and movement vocabulary of classical ballet are all common throughout all of the schools. Arguably, the most influential ballet teacher in the history of ballet arose in the classical era, and that is Marius Petipa. Petipa was a Russian dancer and choreographer who became known for turning Russian folklore into ballet productions. His choreography incorporated challenging sequences that showcased demanding steps, leaps, and turns. He's also the creator of Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, and The Nutcracker, which are all very known ballets. Ballerinas were also expected to be long and slender and have extreme flexibility, which could allow them to have higher skill level and precision that the classical training demanded during this time. The classic tutu was also created during this time, which accommodated the new challenging movements. In the 1900s, Serge Degelev, a Russian ballet dancer and choreographer, moved to Paris to share his innovative ideas that he had for ballet. He is the founder of Les Ballets Russes, a Russian ballet company that toured all of Europe and the Americas during the early 1900s. He revitalized ballet by integrating the ideals of other art forms, such as music, painting, and drama, with the world of dance. His famous ballets include The Firebird and The Rite of Spring. Ballet also began to spread across Europe, which then opened many major ballet companies that include the Royal Ballet in London and the Royal Danish Ballet located in Copenhagen. And lastly, ballet wasn't introduced in America until 4 decades after its origination in the mid-1900s. The two most prestigious American ballet companies are the American Ballet Theater and the New York City Ballet. George Balanchine, otherwise known as the father of American ballet, was a New York ballet choreographer who helped make New York City the dance capital of the U.S. The popularity of ballet has now spread all across America, and you can see professional ballet companies in every state here. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you.